Good morning. As mentioned, my name is Alton, Jamison. I've been in this industry for about 10 years. An honor to be here as a moderator today for our wonderful panelists and guests. And with that said, we'll start with, I think, Brian, I'm going to start with you. And if you take a moment to just introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Brian Nacci. I am from OpenTrack. Essentially what we do is we track freight globally. So from the moment it leaves origin through to in transit, through destination, and then finally final mile. We do all of that by collecting data. I like to say we collect the dots so you can connect the dots all in one place. So thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
Randy Guillot with Triple G Express. I'm a third-generation trucker that handles mostly intermodal freight out of the Port of New Orleans. I also do some short-haul truckloads. I am also past chairman of the Louisiana Motor Transport Association and also a past chairman of the American Trucking Association. And just by looking around at the panel, I'm probably the most seasoned up here. I don't know whether that's the best way to be on this particular panel, especially doing with the topic that we're talking about today, but here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Kersch. I work for Wayfair, that Wayfair, the one that sells furniture. I'm the head of global trade compliance for Wayfair, so that means that I make sure that in North America we're following all of the laws, rules, regulations related to importing and exporting, and we use duty mitigation strategies to try to decrease our duty spend as well.
Thank you to our guests. What we're going to do, I'm going to give just a brief definition of digital integration, and we'll go through our discussion questions, and then toward the end, we'll allow room for questions. So just for the benefit of everyone, digital integration and customer experience or consumer experience refers to the strategic blending and coordination of various digital touchpoints, platforms, and technologies to create a unified, seamless, and personalized journey for users. It involves the smooth collaboration of online channels such as websites, mobile apps, and social media to ensure a cohesive and consistent positive interaction, ultimately enhancing the customer experience. It's a broad topic, so today we definitely hope to touch on some of the hot button issues. So Brian, we'll kick it off and we'll start with you. What are some of the recent trends or innovations in digital integration that you've seen that has impacted customer interactions?
Yeah, thank you for that. We are a tech company. We're a software company. And what we are seeing is the customers want to be met where they are. And what I mean by that is, some folks want to receive an email. They want to be contacted via text or chat, or in some cases now, WhatsApp. So it's important to us to synthesize all that data, collect all that data, not just on the front end, but on the back end as well. So when we collect that data, just from a customer experience perspective, if a customer has a question, or if a customer has a comment, or a customer is unsure of how to use a product, we need to capture that data and make sure that we send it to the right people. But then capturing that data on the back end, we want to make sure that we can reference that whenever we need to. It was collected from a certain platform or a certain application, and then we can act on it. So it's then sent to the right people internally. That's critically important to us. And to make that user experience frictionless is also important to us. We can't have customers have one experience if they're on our chat and a totally different experience if they're calling or emailing us. So to make sure that they have a frictionless, seamless experience is critically important.
Thank you. Randy.
So I can mention, oh, sorry, Randy, did you want to go? No? I can mention some innovations that Wayfair is doing, things like being able to search for sustainable products on our website. I know that sustainability is a hot issue right now. You can also, on our Canadian website, you can search for items that are made in Canada. Unfortunately, you can't do that in the US because of some FTC regulations. We can't make that happen. But I think even cooler, I work a lot with Customs and Border Protection and the CBSA in Canada, which is the same, it's their CBP. And the biggest hot button topic for CBP right now is stopping fentanyl from entering our borders, entering into the U.S. That is their #1 priority. And unfortunately, all of us in the room have statistically been touched by addiction, in some way or another. So it is a very important thing. One of the things that CBP is doing is using a lot of digital integration techniques to identify shipments of fentanyl or fentanyl precursors to be able to stop those from entering our borders. For example, last week, 9 Chinese companies were indicted by CBP because they were bringing in fentanyl precursors that they were selling on social media websites. And they were able to identify them because they were, on their manifests, were listing like sand for $10. Why would you buy sand for $10 from China? It's going to cost you more to get it here than the $10 that you're paying for the sand. So they were able to use, digital integration to be able to identify that shipment didn't make any sense. And set up, it used to take CBP over a month to send out a sample that they suspected might be an illegal drug and to get it back, get those results back. They've now set up high-tech labs at the main FedEx distribution center in the U.S. and also at several ports around the world, so that now they can get those results right away. So these 9 Chinese companies that were indicted last week, again, they used digital integration to be able to identify the shipments. But the scary thing about these shipments from these 9 companies is that these were chemicals that are typically used in veterinary medicine, which is perfectly fine, except that when you start cutting fentanyl with them, Narcan has no effect on these chemicals. So now you've got fentanyl, people taking fentanyl cut with these chemicals, and we can do nothing to save them once they've taken it. So thankfully, CBP has realized this and has used digital technology, digital integration quite a bit to be able to identify these harmful shipments and frankly protect our general population.
Thank you for that. Go ahead.
So, for us, being a trucker, we've got a lot of broadband on our customer base, a lot of different diversities in our customers. And it seems like each customer kind of wants their own thing. And I even made a comment in our prep conversation. I think I offended Monty a little bit, didn't mean to, but it's kind of evolved in my lifetime where we've made information available, and at the time, call it 10 years ago, where customers were wanting to come into our system and kind of scrape whatever they wanted. And I made a comment, and Bonnie came unglued on me here, but
I just thought you
all in friendly, and that's okay. I get it, right? Her comment was, she's tracking 1 million shipments a day, and my comment was the shippers were, I'm not going to say lazy, but didn't want to go through the effort of getting the information from our systems. In today's world, they want it given to them in the fashion that they want to see it. And each customer seems to be different, right? So it's not like I can sit back and say I've got one system to accommodate my whole customer base. It's almost like I've got one system, but it's got to accommodate each customer the way they want it. And that's the point that we were driving to in that. And with us, and most truckers these days, we've got cameras, we've got electronic logging devices, we've got GPS all in our systems now. So we don't necessarily have to manually generate a message anymore. We can allow the system to cross a geofence. Our safety department, if we're geofencing a particular stop sign inside of a chemical plant, or if we have a particular road that we want to monitor speed limits on, or whatever the case may be, we're getting that information in real time to make it productive for our customers as well as for ourselves. And that's been a really good tool. And kind of, we're still all learning, I think, on how much information is enough and how much is maybe too much. So anyway, I think that's where we're at right now.
Thank you for that. Randy, I'm going to try to kick off the second question with you if you want to hop in. What challenges do organizations commonly face when integrating digital solutions? So whether it's, employee training or just the technology in general, but what are some of the challenges?
Yeah, I think, and again, I define myself as the most seasoned member of this panel here. So change for some folks, especially as they're getting later on in their career, is a little bit more challenging, right? The younger folks coming in, they grew up with, you know, the games, the handhelds, the iPhones, and all that kind of stuff. Those of us who started long before those things existed and remember the days when the invention of the fax machine was, you know, brand new and embraced that top. I got one laugh there. We can relate. The rest of the audience there. But anyway, as you integrate, you know, new systems, new ideas into what you're doing, in some cases it's embraced, in some cases it may not be. A prime example are cameras in our trucks. You know, those cameras we're using each and every day in our safety efforts, but we're also using it in accident mitigation in our legal environment. That's so terrible in Louisiana. Wags, you know, made comment of that. I would challenge anyone in the state of Louisiana to put above our legal system as the #1 deterrent for business in Louisiana. It is positively our #1 deterrent for existing businesses and potential new businesses. It is awful. And it is an extreme cost that's there for each and every one of us and our employees. Enough on that soapbox. But the cameras were one where drivers initially, I don't, you know, every time, you know, you try and put one in there and you bring it in. Electronic logging devices, you know, they didn't want that technology in there. And you integrate it and you know, we kind of learned that maybe we'll go with, out of our fleet, you know, 1 or 2%, call it less than 5 drivers, that may be younger, that may be more embraced with technology, and said, let's get them in the system and let's get them integrated and let them be our spokesperson for the new system, right? And once you get that, then all of a sudden, maybe an accident happened and one of those drivers that had the camera in there now can tell the store, hey, look, you know, not only it wasn't my fault in this particular case, but I can now prove that it's not my fault. You know, in my business, if you didn't have that camera, you're wrong. I don't care who you are, what you say, you're wrong. But now I've got my camera, and now I don't have to say I wasn't wrong. I've got visual, physical evidence that I produce on the scene of an accident. It goes straight through the driver's phone, goes straight through the trooper that's working the accident scene. Hey, this is what really happened. Whether we're right or wrong, we've got that to give on the site. So once we had maybe a younger person embrace it and maybe we had good success, then all of a sudden, then we got the next 2% or the next 5% of the fleet, and we just built the fleet off of that. And once you knock down maybe 25% of the population that's embracing that particular technology that you're trying to involve with, then the rest of the 75% kind of flows pretty good. That's my story.
Thank you, sir.
One of the challenges that we face with digital integration is we have in our warehouses, as I'm sure many of you do, a system of sorters, right? So something will get off of a truck, go onto a belt, go overhead, and then it gets scanned, and then based on the results of that scan, it knows which lane to go down to go to the outbound truck, right? And so if it's scanned and it's going to Vancouver, it might go to line 2, whereas if it's going to Toronto, it goes to lane 3, right? Well, the highest selling group of items at Wayfair is rugs. That's what we sell the most of more than anything else. And rugs come to you rolled up, right? With like saran wrap around them, shrink wrap, whatever. Well, the problem is the rugs are too big to ride the sorter. So we have this big fancy system full of technology, but our rugs can't ride the conveyor belts. So we bought these things that we call rug tacos. They're literally metal things shaped like a taco, right? And we put the rugs in them, and now the rugs can ride the conveyor belt. So sometimes you may have all of these high-tech digital integration, really cool high-tech like sorter systems, but then your rugs can't ride the conveyor belt, right? So, you know, best laid plans, right? So sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, how can I make my business effectively work with these digital integration tools that have been built? So just an example of our rug tacos.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. And with us, it's really about evaluating why are we doing this. So we do the why, how, and what. And really it starts with why. Why are we integrating specific systems or disparate systems? And we want to understand, what exactly is our why? If we're going to automate or integrate a bad process, it's just going to make bad things happen faster. So we really need to define why are we doing this. Then that moves on to the how. And I think Randy and I had this conversation last week, I think the three of us, which was, where you sold a bill of goods that were misleading. We don't find as much anymore that we're unable to integrate with specific systems, but we have come across where we were oversold slightly, that the capabilities of the system that we were integrating with weren't exactly what we were sold. We were still able to integrate, but some of the things were, do you have the in-house technology teams or the in-house teams to understand how to do this? Does it make sense to outsource this? Do you outsource this to companies that only focus on integration? One that comes to mind that I work with a lot is a company called Chain.io, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. All they do is integration. So we leverage their expertise where we go to them and we present our why. They understand why we're doing it. Then they come back with, okay, here's how we're going to do it. We need resources here or resources there. We'll take the lead. And then finally is, what do we expect to get out of this integration? Most integrations do lead to a more positive customer experience. We always start with the customer and work backwards. So if we're going to integrate something, what is our customer going to get out of it? What are we going to get out of it? Does it make sense to integrate with another software platform where we have a really good solution, they have a really good solution, but together we have a great solution? So those are just some of the challenges that we face as a tech provider.
Sounds good, sounds good. Next question, Bonnie, I guess you can kick it off with you. How can businesses ensure that their digital integration effects are truly customer-centric, so not just improving internally, but externally as well?
Yeah, so I mean, for Wayfair, our customers are all of you in the room, right? So maybe a little bit different than some like service providers in the room. I mentioned earlier, like being able to shop for sustainable products, being able to look for items that are made in Canada. You can also look for, you can search for items that are made by like Black and Brown owned businesses, right? There's lots of different ways that you can search for goods. But one of the really cool things that was just developed that I just used the other day because I'm remodeling my house, which I don't recommend to anyone. It's a very painful experience. There's this tool where you can, it's a 3D room planner. So you can basically put in the dimensions of your room. So you can say, I have this wall that's like, 9-foot ceilings, it's 10 feet wide, whatever. And then you can pick furniture on Wayfair's site and put it all in this virtual room. For any of you who grew up playing The Sims, it's like that, but with actual items on Wayfair's site. So you can look and see. So what I did is I took the vanity I wanted for the bathroom, and I took the mirrors I thought I wanted, and I put them above it and said, well, can I space them right? Like, are these two mirrors gonna make sense? And I wanted to put like a wall sconce in the middle, right? So I could pick all of these things on Wayfair's site and virtually see it in a room before I actually purchased everything to make sure the dimensions were right and so on. To me, that's super cool. So that's one of the things that we're using, digital integration for our customers.
So why didn't you want to do your renovation after you did all that? It sounds like fun.
Because there's people in my house, like 12 hours a day, and I work from home. So.
But Bonnie, if I can ask before we go to everyone, what do you see to add to that question, the role of maybe AI and Chat GPT and all of this as well, if you want to add that to your comment?
Yeah, so, AI is all up in that process, right? But one of the things that my team has to do, some of you may have heard about HTS codes. So basically every item in the world has an HTS code assigned to it, and that code is what determines your duty rate when you import into the US, okay? So we tried, and it's really complicated to get to that HTS code. You have to answer a series of questions and know a lot about your product to determine that code. So my team, when Chat GPT really came out, we said, we're gonna try it. We're gonna try Chat GPT to classify some of these items, to provide it with an HTS code. It did okay, but it didn't do great. But then we got into the conversation about the legal ramifications, and is this going to pass muster with US Customs? And ultimately, after that conversation with a ton of lawyers and so on, the answer is no. Like, we're not quite there yet. I think that, tools like ChatGPT and other forms of AI are very useful. We use it all over the board at Wayfair to determine, we have algorithm-based programs that will determine if your package was lost in transit, for example. And those are updating every day based on data science algorithms and other AI tools. But there are some things that aren't quite ready yet from a legal perspective, so we can't quite use them just yet, but I think that the time for that is coming, like real soon. We just need the law to catch up to, what's happening.
Sounds good. Brian, Randy?
Alton, I'd like to answer your original question, and then I'd like to pose and see whether my fellow panelists have solutions to. In my business, you originally asked about whether we're integrating systems that not just for the benefit of myself, but for the customers. So we're an intermodal trucker. We not only have, our customer who we're trying to please, but we're working with intermodal partners. We're working with ocean lines. We're working with railroads. We're working with chassis providers. We're working with terminal operators. And what we've found is that as we try to satisfy the relationship of information flow between ourselves and our customer for their benefit, right? For your benefit, we find that other members of the team, if you will, the intermodal team, are not necessarily willing to play ball. Some of them, want to own the information that they may be part of because they want to financially benefit from it. Some may want to own the information because they don't want the other parties to know what they know, even though it might be for the benefit of the customer. So we have a difficult time of integrating everything together for everyone's benefit of the intermodal chain. And I'm asking my fellow panelists, have y'all had similar issues where some people in the supply chain may not be willing to play ball? And how did you overcome that, is my question.
Yeah, I can start there, and I can also circle back to the original question. So to answer your question, Randy, yes. And it's about presenting the value to them. So, you made a great point that you're working with all these different partners. They want to own the data. You really have to explain the value proposition to them in order to integrate. I'll give you an example. We integrate with railroad carriers. We integrate with drayage providers, ocean carriers, and others. And when I can go to a new drayage provider and explain to them, we can remove the friction from your manual process today, and it's not going to cost you anything, and we're going to protect your data. It has a lot of benefits for them, right? They're going to be able to lower their operating costs. They're going to be able to automate notoriously manual processes. They're going to be able to scale without adding headcount. So there's a variety of reasons why they should do it. We have not found, I'm sure others may have, but we have not found that once we explain that value proposition to them and how collectively everybody will benefit from them, they usually come on board. But it's not always as easy as we would like it to be. Sometimes it does take multiple phone calls and multiple case studies and test cases. We do offer, I'm going to shamelessly plug OpenTrack, just slightly if that's okay. We do offer an evaluation period where customers and partners can come on board and evaluate us over 30 days and make sure we're the right fit.
I think for me, it's the government that I find to be the slowest to change and to adapt. As part of my job, Wayfair is the second largest importer into Canada, like higher than anybody else except for Amazon. And so as part of my job, I have the privilege of getting to go to Canada and talk to like the Prime Minister's office and ministers, cabinet ministers and so on to lobby for certain things on behalf of Wayfair. One of the things is anytime we get audited and then there are some corrections that need to be made to some of our customs entries, a box of paper shows up at my house. Okay, why am I receiving, like they might as well fax it like it's the 80s, right? Like why are you we can't email it? Right? So one of the things I was lobbying for was please stop mailing me paper corrections. Can you digitize this a little bit? So I find that it's government agencies that are the most reluctant and slowest to change.
And by the way, the faxes start in the 70s.
Well,
Just to let you know. I appreciate the compliment, though, because you put me in the 80s, so I appreciate that. But I was there in the 70s when it first got started.
my bad. I wasn't there in the 70s. So.
Yeah. But
Next question.
But and I'll just follow up with one other statement. For those of you who are familiar with the last year in the Ocean Shipping Reform Act of 2022, right, a lot of this information flow was through that legislation. And there are initiatives now through the federal government to say, hey, what can we integrate more for the supply chain? Because everything was obviously during COVID was backed up and not flowing very smoothly. But we still have not gotten progress, and that's trying to force some of the intermodal players to the table because they have been reluctant and they're not necessarily always, they're certainly not U.S. based, in particular the ocean lines, but they have other agendas that they may have either because of their companies, worldwide companies, or because of the countries of origin that they may work for. So it complicates that matter. But it is on everybody's radar screen now to integrate. It's just not happening, in my mind, fast enough, quick enough, and fair enough, to be honest with you.
Alton, if I can go back
Oh, yes, sir. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
the original question, what we do, and I'm sure everybody does this in the room, and it's nothing that you've not heard before, we simply ask our customers, what are we doing well? Where are we coming up short? What would you like to see in our product or our solution? What would benefit you the most? I heard a long time ago, and I'm sure you've all heard this as well, you'll never get fired for over-communicating. So we communicate regularly with our customers. We send out surveys. We literally just sent out one yesterday asking them, out of these features that we offer, what is giving your company the most value? And we got a variety of responses. But we always say internally, the market is going to dictate where we head next. We had this survey went out a year ago, and it came back overwhelmingly that, OpenTrack a year ago would give you port-to-port visibility. So the moment it leaves Shanghai and arrives at LA, we did an amazing job giving you all that visibility. And then we started getting requests, however, you're not giving me visibility to when it's delivered to my DC. So we built it, and we call that delivery management. So now we're able to give them visibility from the moment a container is picked up at the destination port, when it's available, when it's picked up, when it's in transit, delivered to the final destination, empty, returned. Because we reached out to our customers, and our customers overwhelmingly told us what we need to build next, we did. Now, I will say that there's one caveat. We don't chase trends. So if I speak to a customer and they say, well, we need better AI, or we need better this or better that, we're not just going to automatically jump on that. We're a tech company. We have to be very selective what we build next, not just for our customers, but does it make sense internally to build, right? We're not a charity, but we do offer a great solution. And if we build things that nobody uses, then that was time wasted where we could have reallocated that time to more impactful features and functionality.
I think what you're saying too is make sure before you do the data integration to make sure that's something your customer needs or wants. Just don't click the button and add it.
For sure. Our customers are our best resources.
What does the role of data security play in all of this? I mean, I imagine, I know I met one gentleman, his company manages rail cars, and that's a big concern. They have their rail car fleets and their data. How big is data security, or how is that a concern for yourself and your customers?
I'll start off that one. Wags had already brought up in his speech, and I just emphasized that our legal environment, especially here in Louisiana, when you deal with information and the security of information and the legalities of, did you give out the right information? Did you give out bad information? And then who you give it out to, and does that make them an accessorial to an event? And the explanation of the example that I use is that particular facility that we may be geofencing that stop sign, right? And we have a driver, one that maybe doesn't completely stop at that stop sign, and we go through our safety protocol to try and make him a better driver the next time, right? But let's say a completely different driver gets involved in an incident at that stop sign. Now, does that facility play a role in the obligation of the safety of that stop sign? Because they were aware that our other driver, who had nothing to do with the accident at that stop sign, but they did know we had a driver that didn't stop there. So are they as responsible for that accident as the driver who got involved with it? Whether it's the truck's fault or not, maybe it was the car's fault involved in it. But now maybe that facility is now just as liable because the intersection wasn't as safe as it should have been. And they had knowledge of it because of our integration of our information. So my statement earlier is there sometimes, and it's certainly a question in everybody's mind, and everybody's probably going to have a different opinion, is too much information too dangerous? And that's what my comment is to the audience. I think information is important. I think it should be transparent. And I think a lot of it is very valuable. But at some point, too much, you know, in Bonnie's case, if Wayfair knows you got fentanyl in one of your suppliers, man, that's a huge responsibility back on Wayfair's back. You know, and how did you find that out, and what did you do about it to mitigate it? So anyway, that's my 2 cents on too much.
Brian, Bonnie?
I think that was a great answer.
Yeah, I would just say I can't go very deep on how it's done, but data security and data privacy is extremely important to our customers. We do work with many Fortune 500 public companies. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. Where we host our solution, where your data is kept, how it's secured. It's critical to our customers to know that their data is secure. Our customers have customers who sign into our system. They need to know, is that data segregated? We don't want each other's customers to see each other's data. And then how that's done. And that's the part where I can't go too deep. I wish my CTO was here. He'd be able to explain how to do it. But data privacy is incredibly important to our customers, as I'm sure it is to all of yours.
Next question would be, how do you integrate the new technology, let's say internally to your employees, or if it's new software technology, is there training? And then just to add to that, how do you get feedback from internally and externally if it's successful?
I think for us, Wayfair's a tech company. We're not a furniture company. We don't manufacture furniture. We actually don't even own any furniture. It's a really interesting business model. So we're a tech company. We build all of our tech capabilities in-house. And that can be difficult. Sometimes I just wish we would like pay for SAP or something like that, because it can be really difficult to learn all the new technology and to keep up with it. And when a tool breaks, that can be difficult too, right? Because in such a large company, it's sometimes hard to find the owner or the person who knows how to fix that tool and to get it back up and running. So for me, I don't necessarily have an answer to your question. I'm just telling you, I find that difficult as well, right? I think it is difficult to keep up with all the new tools that are out there, and understand, like, we're constantly integrating with new carriers, new brokers, that sort of thing, new freight forwarders, and they all want a little bit different thing on their API or EDI feeds, right? They have a couple different fields they need to add, or a couple different things, like you were talking about, right? And that can be difficult to manage. So I think just making sure you hire the right people, you retain the right people, because in a tech company, it's really hard when you have to start over with a new person every couple of years. Right? So retaining talent, I think, is super important. So you have that knowledge that carries over.
For us, being a lot smaller company than a Wayfair, we've got great partners in this whole system, right? Our IT, our partners there. We've got great employees. But people get bought out. We're experiencing that right now, where one entity got bought out by another, who got bought out by another, and we're now on a fourth or fifth ownership, and you start getting into who owns what in the IT world, and maybe the service doesn't come down the pipeline as much as we'd like to see it. But internally for us, for folks like me, I like to give a result that I'd like to see, and then I need to step away, because I am by no means qualified to do any of this. And I look forward to the younger ones to carry forward on how to get to the goal, right? So I defer as much as I can while making demands as best as I can.
Yeah, I think Bonnie made a great point, which is retaining good talent, right? We do our best as our company grows. We're still a little on the smaller side, but as our company grows, it will become more and more difficult to explain to everybody or to share that information of what we're doing, why we're integrating, what we're integrating with, the purpose, the expected outcomes. But communication is key, right? The folks that work for us, they want to make an impact. They want to know that what they're doing. They're all working towards a similar goal. They're giving the customers a great experience. We're building an outstanding solution and what they can do to be a part of that. And everybody that I work with, anybody that we bring on board, one of the very first things that I explain to them is I want you to raise your hand when you see we can be doing something different, better, more effective, more efficient. Don't just assume that what we're doing today is the most productive way to do those things. So if you know of a better solution, if you know of an easier process, if you know of a way that you've done things in the past, or you've recently heard about something, raise your hand. But communication is absolutely key.
What would you say, I guess, if someone's sitting in the audience now, that could be a newer business, a small business in there, it's so much information, you know, where do you start? Like, is there a website, a resource, a book, or hire somebody differently? Or, you know, what would be a good, how do you all get started?
I think for me, like when I hire a new employee to my team, we have these things called coffee chats. So they're just 30 minutes that you block off on someone's calendar and you just meet them and you say, what do you do for a living? Like, what do you do at Wayfair? And then, you know, explain, like, help me understand how my team and your team should be working more closely together and what tools can I help provide to you that would help you do your job better and vice versa, right? So if I have a new employee coming to my team, I give them a list of maybe 10 to 15 people that I want them to go have these coffee chats with, because those people can train them better, you know, than I ever could, right? Because just having those 30-minute chats with all of those various stakeholders, these are people not in our team. These are people in completely different areas of supply chain or other areas of the business who can say, here are the tools I use every day and how they help me. And then the new employee might say, oh, I could see how maybe that would help me as well, right? And then they've started a conversation, they've started a relationship, and they can, you know, learn more that way than I could ever teach them.
Start off with the fax machine and grow from there.
No typewriter?
Well, I got manual typewriters. I learned how to type on a manual typewriter, not even electric. But you know, I think conferences like this, you know, if you're a small business and you're just getting started and what to do next, you know, I've spent a large portion of my time in my career affiliated with different associations that allows me to interact with folks like yourselves. And hey, you know, if you pick up one tip from this panel or one tip from the next panel or whatever, and then try and go back to your own business and integrate what fits for you, right? Because not everybody's going to fit in the same shoe. But that to me has been very valuable in my career.
Yeah, I agree with everything I just heard. Another thing that I found very interesting,
fax machine?
including the fax machine. I've seen a fax machine. I've never used one. Admittedly.
Teacher?
What is also critically important, what I found, and I learned this the hard way about 10 to 15 years ago, and I'm sure everyone in here would agree, or at least acknowledge, logistics, sometimes we have our own language. You know, we bring folks on, some of the younger folks out of, young women and men out of college, and they come on board, and it's Logistics 101, and we're talking about shippers and TEUs, and we're speaking a different language to them. And we do include the entire team on various calls where we just explain, here are some of the things that we're seeing in the industry, here's what we're talking about. If you have any questions, happy to explain. But then we also make time to do one-on-ones, because as everybody knows, when you're in a group, you're sometimes reluctant to raise your hand and ask that question because you may feel, you know, this is a stupid question and everyone has heard. There's no stupid questions. So we do make time to peel off and have those one-on-ones where you can just speak freely. Do you have questions? Do you have concerns? Is there anything that we can explain to you? Is there anything in the industry that's happening today where some of us that have been in the industry for a while can explain to you and why that's happening or what we've seen in the past? You know, there's people in our company today, they were not around in 2015 when there was a potential port strike on the West Coast and rates shot through their roof for inbound containers. They weren't around for that. The geopolitical disturbances, they don't quite understand how that affects the entire globe and how it affects shipping. So it's important to make time to have those one-on-ones along with the coffee talks. And so I just wanted to just highlight, I do agree with the panel here.
Thank you. With that said, I know we have several minutes left. I think it'd be a good time to maybe open up for questions.
So when you're having all this digital integration, a lot of times when you change a software, there's a policy change because you're doing something differently You know, and how have y'all do you have examples of how you've been successful of getting people to buy in to essentially a policy change that's driven by a new process in your software? You're changing the direction a little bit, and we're used to handwriting a note on there, and now digitally you can't do that. And so you have to come up with some system, some policy to address those changes. Do y'all have any examples how y'all been successful doing that?
Yeah, I can start there. People sometimes love their processes no matter how broken they are or how bad they are. So I've heard this a long time ago, and I think it's very true. People are resistant to revolutionary change, not evolutionary change. So if you're able to go into a new company, we've introduced our product to a new company. I've seen this many times. Some folks are just married to Excel spreadsheets, and we're trying to get them away from that so that everything can be automated. Everybody's reading from one sheet of the music. It's difficult at times, but again, it just gets back to, here's why we're doing this. It was planned ahead. It's not a surprise to them that, oh, by the way, tomorrow, your Excel spreadsheet's going away. It's an evolutionary change. And as long as that's communicated, we have found, and I'm sure my co-presenters here may have some different thoughts on this, but we have found when it's explained to the end user, here's why we're doing it, here's how it's going to work, here's the expectations, here's why it's going to benefit you, it seems to be an easier transition than when you step in and say, do not use that Excel spreadsheet anymore, we're moving to a different solution. So as long as it's explained correctly, you tend to get buy-in. And that's what we've found.
I'll just add one caveat, is Brian, you've, and I agree with you, right? But if the change benefits somebody else in the system and not the person that has to make the change, but it benefits someone else, it's a little bit harder to get it embraced, you know, and we try and act, hey, let's be a team on this thing here, you know, maybe you're taking it on the chin today for the benefit of somebody else, but then maybe that somebody else will be giving it back to you at a later date. It's just hard to get to that point. And one thing we've done as a company, and we've done this now, third year, fourth year, you know, we're sharing in our profits, right? So it generates, hopefully, the team atmosphere that, you know, everybody's working towards the same goal, because in turn, everybody will be rewarded additionally above your normal salaries and benefits. And that sometimes helps us achieve the goal. And as far as the policies are concerned, it just scares the heck out of me every time you try and make a policy in writing because of the legal ramifications of this policy or that policy. And I'm just one that's lived and breathed my whole career through a legal environment that I'd really rather not be in, right? I'd rather just go haul some freight for somebody. But those policies can sometimes bog you down on things. So I like to have understandings and systems that might not necessarily translate into a specific policy that may be detrimental to the bigger cause later on.
We introduced a new way for shippers at our warehouses to generate a bill of lading. And there's one lady who's been in the same job for like 10 years, right? So she wasn't using the new tool. And we quickly learned this when you would print the same bill of lading 3 times, and it would tell you that you had 3 different numbers of items on your truck. So like the first bill of lading you printed would say you have 100, the second one would say 105, the third one would say 110. That's obviously not going to work because now we don't know what's on our truck. So we had to go back to her. I had to physically fly to Kentucky and sit down with her and say, look, this is why I need you to use the tool. This is how it's going to benefit you in the long run. It's a faster, you no longer have to click on 3 different things. You just click on this one place, you can generate your bill of lading. Once I explained to her like exactly, I sat down with her person to person and explained why the tool was useful, how it would benefit her. Now the problem is solved and she's using it. But at the same time, I deprecated the old tool so that she can't use it anymore. So I think it's sort of both, right? But anytime, frankly, as it's been said before today, right? Change is hard. It's hard for all of us, So I think helping, exactly what you said, helping people understand like why we're making this change. I'm admittedly one of the people, I love my Excel spreadsheets, right? So moving to a dashboard of some sort away from that Excel spreadsheet can be hard. I love doing a VLOOKUP, Now I don't need need a VLOOKUP,
That's right.
but so it changes hard, right? So
Well, you made a great point, which is, you print the bill landing once and then you print it again and it's got different results, and the third time different results. And that's one of the values of having a singular solution, which is everybody is getting one source of the truth.
right.
And Randy, you also made a good point where if it's not benefiting them directly, it's sometimes difficult to understand, well, what is the end goal here? If it's not going to benefit me, why should I buy in? And sometimes it's for the greater good of the company, that's why you're buying in. And that's sometimes difficult to explain and understand on the other end, for sure.
Can we give our panelists a hand, please?